Hey now, it is Dan Aberhart here. I am the host of today's Growing the Future podcast episode. We're on season 3, episode 14. And don't forget to check us out on social media. We're on all the major platforms. Give us a follow on YouTube. Check out the latest and greatest episodes on growingthefuturepodcast.ca, and you can become an insider there where we'll email you everything that's going on in our world. This week, we have joining us one of the largest, or I guess the largest independent grain bin and grain dryer dealers in Western Canada. It's been earned, folks. It's been earned, folks. We're going to dive into that, how Dave managed that. They specialize in grain handling innovation, cutting-edge technology, such as grain monitoring through grain management advisors. Very interesting concept, very innovative, all based on service. They have been in business since 1984, and this is a business that's near and dear to the Aberharts. If you've ever been out to Langenburg, past the site of the former Gopherville, 1 mile east of Langenburg, and you're a farmer, guaranteed you're going to be rubbernecked at the gorgeous gleaming 50 to 60,000 bushel bins, complete with all the latest and greatest widgets and technology. It's sort of my dad's shining glory. It really is his pride. I know he loves those bins, and I know that he loves working with Dave and Walgrain. So you can find Walgrain on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. They also have an awesome website you can check out at www.walgrain.com. I am very pleased today to welcome Mr. Dave Walsh.
Thanks, Dan. Always been fun visiting with your family.
Oh, I've heard so much about you, so it's great that we're going to unpack your business, how you guys have innovated, how you've grown the business, and some of what the entrepreneurial journey has meant to you, and talk about some of the things you're doing to give back in that regard. So here we go. Dave, question number 1. And we're going to get lots of good stories this morning. How did you become the biggest and the baddest in the bin business?
Well, I think it started out working for a company and things were not working well, so I jumped in on my own. And we started off with a mission statement, and that was giving service is number 1. And we drilled that into our people, our contractors, and they loved that concept. And over the years, I remember one time we had another logo that says build it right on time, because we hated to go back and fix things. So let's do it right the first time, and we never have to do it again and extend warranties. So giving service was how it started, that mission statement. And then people were attracted to it. Getting the key people, having mentors with me that helped me through the 80s and the 90s, those were not the best years in farming. That was a year of the drought in 88, low prices in the 90s, but we had the people, and not only the people that worked with us, but also suppliers and other people that came with us. I remember in 84, when we started in Brandon, there was another little company just outside of Brandon. They were farmers, they were innovative. Say, I got to join these guys, and they were 3 brothers that were all engineers. So they said, "What can we make you?" And so they started making unloads, and they revolutionized grain bin unloading. They were the first ones to design a U-trough, and then now they have 10 copycats, and they're one of the biggest unload manufacturers in the world. They build unloads for 150-foot diameter bins. So just teaming up with people like Springland Manufacturing and, other companies, that has pushed us to the growth that we did.
You're talking about John Lepp,
yes,
and the tulips, because the tulips ran into my sister-in-law the other day, and they were asking about the bins and asking about you, and it turns out there's all these small connections in agriculture. It's only 1.5 degrees of separation. So awesome.
Yeah, talents. The story, the networking, and I remember years ago we were sitting at a wedding, and my son is there, and we said, "What is the number what is the best thing you can learn in university that they don't really teach it? This was back in the 80s. And it started with the N word. And nobody could get it until they said computers, and they said networking.
Yeah, the power of the network, eh?
Yeah, the power of networking. And I think that's why Wall Grain became where we were, because we networked with key people to help us grow our business.
Yeah, so when I phoned my dad last night to kind of get the inside scoop on, working with you, and it was a very brief conversation. He's combining, everything's on the roll, but, this theme of service keeps coming back up. What does that really mean? What does service mean? What are you talking about executing on?
So service is going in there with, I remember a story one of my mentors said, he said, so Dave, how many bins are you going to build this year? So we're going to build 100 bins. And he says, well, do you have the right people? Do you have this? Do you have that? And so we would put the right people. So one of the things you have to have a coordinator. You have to have a supervisor. So to get past 100 bins and to 200 and 300, so we would hire, we have a coordinator, and then we have a supervisor that supervise all the bin builds. And if the crew doesn't match that criteria, they're gone. Because we don't like building it wrong. So service, that drove the service part, is not only getting it built, getting it shipped there, and then doing it all the pieces right.
Give us an idea of the scope of your business, because you are the largest, correct? You have the most market share. Give us an idea of the scope of your company over the years.
Well, over the years, the average is 400 to 500 big bins per year. And that is supplemented by all the service work that we do with insurance claims, fixing stuff this. For example, this winter we got hit by high winds in Saskatchewan, and we had a ton of insurance claims. So one of our guys, his name is also Pete Wall, no relation. So we went around looking at these sites, and so he was called Dr. Wall because he can fix anything. And I'm Professor Wall.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I love teaching about I guess that's the other thing that drove everything. I love teaching. I love doing seminars, and the grain management is vital to getting things done. Because in the 80s, you looked at the combine. At that time, if you don't remember, they delivered combines on a rail. So you would look at a rail line, and there was two combines sitting on there. And he says, well, one of my mentors said, if they can sell combines, you can sell grain bins. Because all this people, they pour all this energy into growing the crop, from agronomy to all this stuff. And then they get to combining, and all the technology, they didn't do the technology on managing the grain once it's off the combine.
Mm. So what problem are you really solving for farmers? Why do farmers need a bin? Why should they care about a bin? What problem are you really solving for farmers?
Well, I had this call yesterday from a farmer, and he said, man, Dave, I couldn't farm today if I didn't build those bins. And
nice.
He says, that has saved my bacon, he said.
Yeah.
And, I think he's built maybe 1 million bushels, and it really doesn't matter whether it's 300,000 or 1 million bushels. That bin has made him money, because he's straight combining wheat. It's 17-18%. It's just going in the field, going in the bin. We put on the right fans with the right airflow. In the 90s, we said, come on, guys, build me a moisture cable. So most of the bins are now equipped with not only temperature cable, they have moisture cables, so that we can then put automation on the bins so that we can manage that grain. So you can get that, make the most of the pounds of water. The heavier the grain you sell, the more money you're putting in the bank. So it's just combining all these technology to grain storage and management to maximize the pounds that you're combining.
That's something that my dad was sharing with me over the years, is we can do this, we can do that. We have somebody monitoring our grain in the bins. If I have an issue or a question, I can speak to them. And something that I was looking at in your literature, you have this word coaching. I did not expect the word coaching to come up in tandem with essentially, what you're selling is infrastructure. What kind of coaching, what kind of automation, how did this innovation come about?
Well, it started with first temperature cables, and then we pushed the company to build us moisture cables because I wanted to regulate the fans. So at your dad's site there, we put a weather station in, and now we can regulate the fans automatically to the condition of the humidity outside to either take more moisture out and avoid shrink. Because if we run the fans too hot, like on a hot day like this, unless I want to dry the grain, I don't want to take excess moisture out. So and the window to do this is 30 days after harvest. So you have to be right on it, right at harvest time. But most farmers, they are running wild at harvest time. So they don't know. They usually just turn the fans on and let them run for months and months at a time. Well, you can lose a lot of pounds that way. The guy that called yesterday, he said he's filling his bin with anywhere from 15 to 18% weight. And I said, well, man, it's so hot outside, you're going to over dry it. He said, no, that's okay. I'm going to over dry it because I got some more wheat coming off in a couple of weeks, and it's going to rain now. It always rains at harvest time, that window. Yep. And he says, then I'll blend it off.
How much is this an art and how much is this a science? It seems like there's lots of different ideas about how to dry grain and when to dry grain. Have you guys quantified it? Have you got it down to a science, or is there a lot of art involved yet?
Right now, we're coaching upwards of 30 million bushels that we coach for farmers. So it is part knowing what your airflow is on your bins and knowing what your target is. Then you set the fan parameters. So that is, we call that command, GrainX command, like your dad has. And then he tells our coach what his target is for that particular bin, whether he wants to sell it in March or whether he's selling it right after harvest. So then we'll target the airflow and the runtime on those fans. So it is a lot technology, but it's also knowing the knowledge of where you hit those spots. Because every year is different. So it's, we can't fully make it automatic as people think, but it's very close. You got to know the parameters of where to set the fans. And so we call that tweaking. And I don't know if most farmers have the time to tweak it. So we put these big systems in with management, like for your dad. It's coached for him. Tweaking
different than twerking. Tweaking, I like that.
Yeah.
So what is the difference between something that's tweaked and not tweaked? Like, and how did this idea of having a coach is, you say in your literature, it says you got 7 of these coaches. Tell me what that looks like and how you got started with that.
So farmers would often call me in August. So, Dave, should I be combining? Should I combine this 18%? And I said, yes. And even if it's very hot, you should combine at 18% because I want to capture the grade and the weight. And understanding all the airflows on his particular bin, we can take that down to 14 or we blend it off. So then it evolved into where we do grain drying seminars. And grain drying is another passion I have. So the best way to capture most of the grain is to combine it as soon as you can. Canola is a little tougher because it often comes off hot at 11% or 9%, and by the time you cool it, it's down to 6 or 7%. So there's a way to, it's hard to, you just reduce, our goal is to reduce what we call shrink.
So when you add these coaches, what's the biggest reveal? What's the biggest counterintuitive thing that you find with farmers, what they want to do versus when you get them into coaching, they end up doing? So
the biggest reveal is you don't have to run the fan as much as you think. There's a chart that we provide where you can store 16%, 18%. There's a time period where that grain will not spoil. And so you have the window to get it to the right moisture content. Same with hot grain. You try to cool it off and in the high humidity, cooler nights so you don't lose as much moisture. So it's running the fans at the right time. The other take was a lot of farmers would freeze the grain, which is a no-no because we've just cooled it down to 2 Celsius and then you seal off the bin, and that grain has a very high insulative factor and nothing was going to happen to that grain. So then you just check it on it just every once in a while to make sure that it stays in that 2 to 5 Celsius.
So a lot of this is about energy management too, I guess, is becoming more and more of a thing.
Yes, because we could reduce your power consumption by 50% by not running the fan as much. So the kilowatts are costly.
And farmers can get back carbon credits on that, right?
Well, electricity is a clean fuel, so it's not really, it's more your pocketbook that you're saving.
Right. Yeah. So this is an electrical system?
That's electrical, yeah.
Well, my dad would love that, being an electrician. No wonder he loves it.
Yeah, electricians, lots of automation.
His electrician's dream. Oh, I think Dad's happy when he's just around the bins. How are you presenting this as a economic opportunity? Because obviously it's a big investment.
You mean the coaching and the automation?
The steel, the coaching, the whole package, the grain drying, everything you guys are offering. When you sit down with the farmer, how do you show them the return?
Well, we know the return on a grain, like drying grain. So grain dryers is a really hot item now with getting grain dryers set up. And we always said you buy a bin, and we did the seminar at your farm the other day where all the guys agreed that a bin makes you $1 to $1.50 a bushel per year. Just the simplicity of managing, being able to combine into a big bin, don't have to move the auger, the grade and the weight that you save, and forward marketing contracts, and everybody was kind of agreeing, and including your dad. He said, yeah, that made me, I got my malt, I went in there, got my malt barley off early at 18%. So the payback on grain bins and grain drying systems is the return on investment is probably a year to 2 years, because most of this is payback is very, very fast. And this is why you see these bins keep going up all around. Like you drive down any country road and you see more shiny bins going up.
You said there's not an excess of storage capacity in Western Canada at the farm gate.
There isn't that much. And if you understand the number one best way to dry grain, we do seminars on the 10 best way to dry grain. And quite often I throw down $50 or $100 and I tell people, tell me the most economical and effective way to dry grain. And it's blending. So terminals do it. So we're saying, why not whether you paper blend or blend on your farm, this is a very effective way to make most of your dollars that you spend into growing the crop.
Right.
So let's get into the grain management of how we can get this grain to the target we want through automation on the temperature and moisture control and drying grain.
Well, there's a tremendous amount of money to be won and lost now with grain contracts, the price of grain, all the different metrics that the grain companies are working with. And we're probably seeing some of this need for technology and, discernment at the farm gate level. It behooves the farmer, I guess you could say, to have more of an ability to manage that at the farm gate, like more and more as they approach these big grain companies with forward contracting, especially this year with some of the bushels not being there. What are you seeing in the landscape right now in the middle of this crazy year in farming?
Well, I see that the farms are going to keep on getting bigger because this is not a good trend for the smaller operator. So I see farmers getting bigger. The machinery costs have gone through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And so now your dad knows that a bigger grain dryer will pay for itself in 1 year. Because
Why doesn't my brother know that? Because if my brother knew that, we'd have
your
one.
brother, yeah, your brother is there too. Because it's you want to more and more stuff has to be more automated, so it's less work. Because manpower is becoming a bigger issue. It's just, right now you can get a lot of good combine operators, but more and more, that generation of farmers it's getting harder and harder to find the right people that will work. I know you guys have a great team with the Aberhart organization, and but that's going to push farmers to more automation. So the dryer or the capability to one-man operation, you make it simple. So, because quite often I go by Gopherville and there's somebody at the site. I drive in. There's Harv.
He loves it.
Moving grain and moving grain or drying grain. So
it's a fascinating dichotomy because there's a man. I mean, you could choose to do whatever you want, right? And Terry's really big into the delegation and building the team and everything, but Harvey's kind of a hauler of water and hewers of wood. Like, he loves hauling grain. He loves infrastructure. He loves buildings. He loves equipment. And you being right at the heart of that, like he mentioned the first bin that he ever bought from you as being like a 30,000 bushel bin. And I think it was the first bin he ever had with aeration. And he can be sold on that. Just like, it might be painful to pay for things up front, but there's certain categories of stuff that my father will say he's never gone wrong on. And that would be land, and that would be bins, and that would be probably Chevy vehicles as well,
The other take on that, the command and the automation was people didn't realize how much dry aeration was a very effective way to dry grain. So that and most people don't realize that by dry aeration we mean if you take off hot out of the field, you're going to lose 2 points. Or if you take it hot out of a grain dryer, you're going to lose 2 points in cooling. So if it's combining like yesterday, you're going to lose 2 points. When it's 25, 30 Celsius, you're going to lose 2 points in that bin. That's a lot of water. So you either combine early so you don't lose it, but that is a very cheap way to take moisture out. Or with the automation, you try to avoid shrinking it as much as possible. So your dad understood all that.
Right. It's such a fascinating chicken and the egg thing because, of course, it takes big kahunas to move ahead and invest, right? And you got to have an understanding of the opportunity, but it does take a substantial investment. But once you're in it, then you start to sort of get ahead on the racetrack and you start to lap. What do you see? You mentioned 2 points of moisture. What are you seeing with producers that aren't getting on this train? What are they struggling with? The biggest things that you think your solutions would help them with that, you wish you could provide?
The biggest thing they struggle with would be, first of all, designing a system. Because so many times, I remember when we first built the first bin at the Gopherville site, you've got to put that bin down in the right place so that you can add the other things. And so what you do it in steps. So it's fun going to a producer, looking at his farm and saying, okay, here's the 3 of the 4 ways you can dry your grain. Here's how you design your system. Here's how you can add technology. And you do that in steps. But you got to build for 5 or 10 years from now. You don't build for today. So with that site, we went 3-phase and natural gas. So then he right away went to fast dry. which was another innovative thing that we started back in the 80s or 90s. We said, okay, we'll put stir systems in. And in the 90s, we sold a lot of stir system, but then we realized it was so much service and work. So we developed a system called fast dry. And that's what your dad does, where we add make it 110 degrees, like a hot August day, and we dry grain in bins. So that was the evolution of the fast dry. And then just this year, we added 2 more elements to the fast dry system, which was finally found a spreader that actually worked on a 16-inch auger to level the grain off in a bin. So this is where fast dry, and your dad jumped on that fast dry right off the bat. So it's to design the system and then to jump into the dryer. So I guess one of the most confusing things is a grain dryer. And no pun intended, there's a lot of hot air with selling grain dryers. So we developed a process to the technology that has happened on grain dryers in the last 5 years has been leaps and bounds of what a grain dryer now does compared to what it did in the 80s. Because I remember in the 80s, we're selling bin dryers, like the not stir system, but continuous flow bin dryers. And those have gone, like, of the 10 ways to dry grain, that's probably number 10 on the list of effective ways to dry grain, is a continuous flow bin dryer or a stir dryer. So, excuse me. So grain dryers, and it's very easy technology. We just call it HAT. And most grain dryers talk about it. It's heat, air, and time. And I added another T, and that's technology, to this HAT. So when we look at a grain dryer, you got to look at these 4 things on a grain dryer. And there's really only 4 basic kind of dryers out there. And I don't know if your dad ever had one of these old PTO dryers years ago. In the 80s, we still had these old PTO dryers. You remember those?
Yeah. I don't think we had any of that technology on the farm. I think a grain dryer is a little bit of a foreign concept. Yeah, back then.
Yeah, there's only 4 types of grain dryers. There's very popular one is this, like, screens, and then we have the screenless dryers. And I grew up in Manitoba where we have corn, so grain drying is kind of a passion for me because we sold grain dryers in the 80s for corn. And the Vertec was a very popular model at that time. And that's involved into about 10 different companies that sell screenless dryers. And then you have the belt dryer, and then you have the tower dryers, which is a corn dryer. So really, there's only 4 different types of grain dryers. But
what percentage of farms on the prairies have the infrastructure that, in your mind, would be adequate and or grain dryers?
For most producers, they all have some form of grain drying. Mm-hmm. But I'd say 20 to 30% would have a actual grain dryer.
Okay.
Yeah. I sold so many bins over the years and did such a good job of, the dry aeration, the burners, and the natural air drying that for many years, you just built more bins. And that was your drying system, was in your bins. But then I realized producers got bigger and they needed a grain dryer because we need accuracy. We wanted, we over dry the grain a lot with putting a burner on the bin. And then you have to blend it and it's work. A grain dryer is much more precise in getting it to within a half a point of what your target is. So a lot of producers are looking at grain dryers to help them get their grain to the optimum market conditions faster.
Did you understand the evolution of where grain drying was going to go? You said lots of change in the last 5 years, but when you started the journey, say with Aberhart Farms, I was trying to find out from Harvey when that first bin was sold to you. He said, or sold to him, he said that he could look that up. I don't think he got around to that, but you've been working, like you talk about steps, you talk about working through the evolution of a whole bin site was the grain dryer technology innovation inevitable, or is it just something that kind of came out of surprise, came out of left field here recently?
I think that was in the last 5 years. The grain dryers were always around. What they didn't have was some of the technology with the engineering on it. So we joined up with Matthews companies in the 90s, and just like we did with Springland, we felt like sometimes you feel like a guinea pig because when you first produce something, it's R&D. Mm-hmm. And same with grain dryers. There was things missing in the grain drying technology, and that just the last 5 years, the automation with accuracy on the moisture in, moisture out. And the bigger the dryer is, the easier the automation works. Then the stuff on burners, the efficiency of burners, and nowadays the drying costs are so cheap. It's not the propane or the natural gas that costs you money, it's the actual infrastructure of putting up the dryer. So now, when you buy a dryer, you have to think the dryer is the cheap part of the whole equation. You need wet bins. Now, some of these dryers are 500 to 1,000 bushels an hour. Now you got a bottleneck behind the dryer because the dry bin is full. And now you're stopping the combines because somebody's is not moving the dry grain away from the dry bin. So these things have to be all synced together so that when you send out 2 combines or 3 or 4 combines, that has to be all synced up so that you can keep combining. Like tomorrow it's going to rain. So everything you get off today is going to be at a better weight and grain. And just now, you look at the forecast across the prairies today, there's rain coming.
We need it. Who cares? Bring it. I mean, let's get ready for 22.
Yeah.
How did you end up having your biggest year ever in the middle of a drought, Dave?
How did this happen?
Yeah, when you woke up one Sunday morning, you started.
Yeah. Well, one Sunday morning I woke up, I started writing on a piece of paper of the reasons why people were going to buy from Walgrain this coming year, and I came up with 15 reasons. And I ran out of paper.
Nice.
Yeah. And just this morning I'm going through that, and I said, and I circled all those 15 of why would they buy grain bins and grain dryers next year. And there was 13 that apply for this coming year.
Still.
So when I realized that back in December, I bought a lot of steel. I booked a lot of steel. Because one of my suppliers said he couldn't honor my order of 2.5 million pounds of steel. So I saw the writing on the wall and I ordered 10 million pounds of steel.
Wow.
And then the orders, because farmers were coming off such a great year, the orders that were coming in, the farmers were so mad that they had sold grain off the combine and they could have made $3, $4, $6 a bushel if they would have had storage. That doesn't change today. But anyway, the orders just flew in. I don't think I ever worked that hard in my life in December and January.
Harvey said that you were getting well, you said one of your innovations too was starting to sell bins in the winter. It took a while for the competition to catch on that you can sell bins in the winter.
Yeah. Yeah, the sales season is starting very soon, October, November.
I hear you.
We are already gearing up for next year.
That's how the whole industry's gone.
The thing that frustrates us probably every year is we wait for farmers to get their site ready. And, and it's very hard when they're spraying, seeding and spraying that can go into the middle of July. And then all of a sudden in the middle of July, I got 100 sites ready, but I can't build everything.
Mm-hmm.
The window, this is Canada, the window of building is so small. So you do what you can in getting stuff prepped early and getting concrete in early so you can get that built. Because guess which bin they want to use first when you build them?
Just can't wait to put something in that. Yeah.
They want to put the grain in the first bin because, it's usually the bulkiest crop that's combined first. So they want to use the newest, biggest bin,
Sure.
which is the one we just ordered, right?
Oh, I need it feeling.
I need it by August 15th.
Drop some grain in that brand new bin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
no, it's it's a very visible marker of a farm's success, really. And it's funny that some of these markers of success actually breed success in itself. You know, it's not just for show that you did a good job and you can afford it, but it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Once you have it, you can continue to afford it. What has it meant to you to work with people over such a long period of time? Harvey mentioned that you tried to get out of the business, but you're just such a darn good salesman and you love it so much you came back, and you're probably having just as much fun and as passionate about it as ever. You're highly energized by it. I can tell. What have these relationships meant to you? And maybe you took a break on it and you had to come back because you realized this is what you love doing, or what happened there?
Well, I think I love teaching or coaching some of my other salespeople or team to do the same thing I do. But the things change so fast that I guess my coaching time and teaching time wasn't done. So I need to still do some more teaching and coaching. And because I love talking about grain dryers, and we just came up with another new design of a grain dryer that Harv wants. We just have to convince Terry.
Well, and when Harv wants something, usually on a long enough timeline, it used to be that he just went and got it, didn't have to ask anybody, but now it's a little bit more of a democracy, and you know, the board of advisors and all that good stuff. What are you most excited about going forward? Like,
it's working with my team or teams. Like, I have a lot of good people working. We couldn't do this without all the different teams that work with us. Mm-hmm. You know, not only our contractors, our coordinators, supervisors, and I'm looking forward these bigger sites where we do like a big dryer with bucket elevators and designing a system. That's kind of fun.
Mom and Dad are going to listen to this, and he'll just be twitching. He's got to have one.
And then you get a call like yesterday, where the guy is combining 18% wheat, and I love the calls in August because it's harvest time, and you say, just hammer down. He says, we'll build you another 2 bins in early September because he needs more bin space. He's in a good crop, Swan River, so. And
you bought a lot of steel at a very good price. For all this crazy supply chain madness. Yeah. It's wild. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. It's gone up 30, 60, 100, 150, 200, 300%.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a wild year. It's a wild year. So the folks that are listening to this on audio can't see it, but if you're watching on YouTube, you can see in the background a nice set of armor, which I wasn't expecting to be part of the Vista. I don't know if that's what you put on to go manage your AR or anything like that, but you have a different use for it. Tell us a little bit about that and what it means to be in a position on planet Earth that you can give back.
I guess the armor is putting on the armor of God, and the thing is you got to give back. So we do a lot of work in the north end of Winnipeg, and the horrific stories that we hear in the north end. So my kids, they always said, well, you should take care of, instead of doing all this mission stuff overseas, you should do stuff in your own backyard. So we work hard at helping some of the North End ministries, whether it's helping people with coming out of prostitute addiction, or like there's just endless things that people who are, the mental health in today's society is mind-boggling, and the help is so the system is overloaded. So you help where you can on giving back to society, and I don't mind giving that away because better than the government taxing me. So it's always
Yeah.
So it's like we have so many charities that we support, whether it's local charities even in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. They want some money for an arena. I love helping people where it's going right to the people that need the help. And so we always pick charities that are very impacting. And we've done some of the favorite ones. We've gone to Cuba. And Walgrain did the first business seminar in Cuba about 6-7 years ago. We did a little seminar like this
Nice.
about teaching people how to start a business. So, and then that evolved into micro financing in Cuba. And wow, right now we're sending container loads of food to Cuba. Yeah. And that's one country that's in dire need of help. So
when you go and you share entrepreneurship in some place like Cuba, or maybe it's something you took from your mentors, what's the number one thing you want people to take away when they spent that time with you?
That it's better to give than to receive, and this is how we built our business. You go the extra mile. Sometimes we bite our tongue and just go the extra mile, and the same thing with your giving of yourself to your family and to your, people around you, and you can't go wrong with doing the extra that you can in what's been given to you, and it'll come back to you. So,
and how big is your team? How big is your team now as a result of this approach?
We have 35 employees, but we have 15 to 20 contractors that work for us, all summer. They each have 6 to 10 people on their crews.
Wow.
So that's a lot of people. And a
lot of customers.
And a lot of customers, yeah.
And hundreds, if not thousands.
And I guess a lot of them are Mennonites.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I told you this, when you wanted a good crew, you hired a Mennonite crew. First of all, they had the workers, and they multiply, and they also have a work ethic of getting this stuff done properly the first time. But they had the manpower, and for some reason, they knew how to get it done efficiently. And time is money. So to watch them build a bin, we have one crew right now, 2 big 42, they have like 10, 15. So there's 2 bins going up at the same time. It's amazing how everybody knows what to do, and they just boom, and it's up. That's just awesome to see. Yeah. And then when the grain dryers start, when it gets cold and wet, then, man, in 2019, we realized how much grain dryers are still needed in Western Canada. And that year we had people buying dryers in southern Saskatchewan. So it's the evolution is just keeps on going. So yeah, it's fun just teaching and educating and passing it on what you can, what you have.
Well, hey man, that's an amazing story, amazing company, awesome journey. The growth, just incredible, and it's really inspiration to anybody in business. And you can see why you've built the clientele that you have. And it seems like there's a lot of innovations and coaching and teaching ahead. And your experience and your knowledge and your wisdom and your approach are needed in agriculture. So good on you, and thanks for all the awesome service to Aberhart Farms. Over the years, I've heard so much about you and the company and those bins. It's pretty much nonstop with the old man, and that means a lot to him. And my My dad really respects people that do things right, that treat people fairly, that do what they say they're going to do, that can, sell him on new things. He loves new things like that. And I'll be fascinated to see the evolution of the storage and handling and drying capacity out at Aberhart Farms as it grows. So you're a big part of the growth of the grain industry on the prairies when you think about the impact.
Yeah.
How many bushels of storage how many bushels of grain would you have touched?
Wow.
You do that math on a napkin on a Sunday morning.
I think that would take a little time, but yeah, when you think of the like some years we built 20 million bushels quite easily, and that's been going on for 20 years. So you do the math, that's multiple millions of bushels. So,
well, in farming in a democratic nation, I mean, I just see what's going on over in Afghanistan. I just can't imagine the horror of those folks digressing to some sort of primitive tribal state. We are so fortunate in the world, and that's why I'm so bullish about farming in Canada. Yeah, we're going to have lots of ups and downs in years, just never to forget, or you wish you could forget like this year. But long term, investing in the best real estate in the world, which is farmland in a democratic country with the infrastructure to get product out, is the best place to be. And we won the lottery being born here, Dave. Yeah. Instead of north end of Winnipeg in dire circumstances, or Afghanistan or whatever. So as hard as things get, I guess we still got to be grateful, don't we?
Yes, and the agronomy that produces crop with such little rain, it's mind-boggling some days. Like, sure, this is a real bad year, but some years there's only 6 or 8 inches and they're still pulling a crop. It just totally amazes me, the agronomy of what we do. I think Western Canada has always been the leading edge of what we call dryland farming. And this is why Farm Progress, or the show in Regina, was the biggest dryland farming show in the world. So we do it here in Western Canada. We're on the leading edge, and people come to Canada to find out what we do here. People like Springland, all started on the prairies. Yeah. People like myself, okay, let's get this grain drying thing done better, right? Let's make it easier for everybody. Yeah. Yeah. And
huge amounts of innovation.
We're just driven by, okay, let's go with moisture cables. Let's go with automation. Let's do this, do it right. And it's fun seeing it being implemented. And there's so much more to go. So that's why I'm still having fun doing this.
Yeah, I think we're just getting started. Dave, they call you the professor, and you love teaching and coaching. Where can people get a hold of your knowledge and interact with you?
Well, we send out newsletters that are pertinent to the information that is happening in the farming place. Like this year, there was so many insurance claims that most people don't have, are underinsured. So sign up at our website to get on our monthly newsletter. And then we have articles on fast dry or grain dryers, and videos on, how to dry in a fast dry. So our team, together with my son Ryan, they're doing videos so that we can do 5-minute snapshots of how to service stuff. So sign up at our website to get on to our mailing list, so you get all that pertinent information of what's happening.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I was just looking at some of your articles and your brochures and your literature. It's very information dense. There's a lot to learn here, people. So take advantage of Dave's experience. I'm sure he's amongst the most experienced arbiters of storage and grain drying and probably the world. Let's just go the world. Let's go right to the top, the world.
Thanks.
I mean, show us someone better, right, Dave? Right?
I had shipped stuff to New Zealand. I've shipped stuff to Germany or East Germany. So nice. I guess, like we said earlier, the technology of what we have on the prairies is what other people want. And
Dave Wall, Green, folks. Thanks so much, Dave.
Okay.
Appreciate it.